Okay, so I guess a lot of y'all already know me, but I'm Jennifer, membership chair. So we were doing office hours with Miss Katie. This is the second time she's done it, and the first time we kind of bumbled our way through because none of us had done it before. So she is going to talk about the IFS in nutrition counseling for us. So I believe she has a presentation for us, and then after we go kind of through that, we'll shut the recording off so everybody feels comfortable asking questions. Okay. All right,
Thank-
Katie, I think, yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, y'all. Hi, my name is Katie. I am the eating disorder resource professional for behavioral health nutrition. I'm a dietitian and I focus within the realm of eating disorders, maternal child health, and sports nutrition, but I do have a strong affinity for utilizing counseling skills and navigating more of that therapeutic work that we really get to lay the foundation with clients. So bear with me as I'm trying to go ahead and get this presentation up and underway from
Oh,
PowerPoint.
I need to give you the access, don't I?
Um, I am able to share. I just need to make sure I'm sharing the right format of PowerPoint. 'Cause, there's like a bunch of different versions, and now I need to. Okay, wait. There's like a presenter mode, and so I'm trying to get to there. Let's see. There is file. I'm sure it's up here. File. Um, PowerPoint. I used to be really great at this, and then, we had a pandemic and kind of stopped
I'll
being
tell
as
you while
efficient.
she's looking for that, you guys. We did finally start uploading these videos onto YouTube. For those of y'all that have been in on these, we kept saying we're gonna get there, we're gonna get there. We finally got there. It's not the greatest system, but they will be on there. And our YouTube channel has the handle now, so it's just at BHNDPG when you're on YouTube. And then also, if y'all have questions and you don't want to forget them by the end, you can always drop them in the chat too, and we'll have them there.
Please do, please do. Just double checking y'all are able to see the presentation,
Yep.
full mode,
Mhm.
bright and orange, joyful. I chose my joyful colors today. So this presentation is discussing how to navigate the utilization of internal family systems to have an informed nutrition counseling within your informed nutrition counseling with clients. So first to kind of get started here is I created an agenda, but I do want to name kind of where I am at with utilizing IFS. So I am very interested in pursuing my own certification. And I also receive IFS as a client. So I find this work to be incredibly healing in navigating internal difficulties of my own parts. Um, and so I think it's such a gift. And I really, really hope that as this practice, this therapeutic modality becomes more and more emergent within therapeutic work, that dietitians can also kind of lean into this practice a bit as well to really serve the client in a way where the client is able to navigate these parts and go between clinicians without feeling that there's a disruption within their own care. Um, and I also want to hold space that this presentation is not going to touch on everything about IFS, but rather just the overall IFS model, all these different parts within the model. So the model at work, what's the dietitian role, and like how can we kind of maybe start to name or navigate these parts. And then as we navigate these parts, let's like the blending of parts. And then coordination of IFS and protecting the therapeutic space. And then I have some resources at the end. So this is kind of a overall picture of IFS. So we have the true self, we have manager parts, firefighter parts, and Excel parts. And I will go into that in more detail. Um, so what is IFS? IFS is a model of psychotherapy written by Richard Schwartz through his own work with his clients. This is taking a parts approach to fostering self-led healing, driving towards compassion, openness, and curiosity. From the IFS website, IFS is a transformative, evidence based psychotherapy that helps people by accessing and loving their protected and wounded inner parts. We believe that the mind is naturally multiple, and that is a good thing. Just like members of a family, inner parts are forced from their valuable states into extreme roles within us. We also have a core self. Self is in everyone. It can't be damaged. It knows how to heal. So self is kind of who we are when we are born. We are, intuitive people. We are self-led. We are, self is overall just a, a core being of who we are. So how do we get these parts? So we have our protector parts and then we have our XL parts. And so I've kind of broken these up into two different segments. Um, the main protector parts are between managers and firefighters. Managers are proactive parts. Their role is to protect the system from being threatened. So their role is to try and maintain control, practice caution, prevent tender feelings like pain, hurt, rejection, shame, grief, dependency, etc. All things that as we're navigating with clients, what might come up for them is like, oh, I really, I'm having an aversion to doing something, or like I really want to practice caution here. And then we have parts such as our firefighter parts, which are reactive parts. So these parts become enacted when these XLs have been activated. So their job is to kind of, if the kettle is boiling, to put a top on top of the kettle, prevent the steam from coming out. So these are the tender feelings of pain, hurt, rejection, shame, grief, rage, dependency. And then we have our XL parts. So these are often core wounds developed in the younger years that are tender emotions, which are suppressed from the protectors. And often the more that these XLs are suppressed, the louder these protector roles have to work. These parts yearn to be witnessed and heard by the self, and they carry burdens from experiences as well as intergenerational trauma. And then we have self, coming back to that picture from earlier. Self has 13 key virtues. We have the 8 C's of between curiosity, compassion, courage, clarity, creativity, connectedness, calm, and then our 5 P's of presence, perspective, patience, playfulness, and persistence. And when we think about who is self, often we kind of think about a little kid. And my that's how I see a self, is someone who is just very much confident and is really curious and is excited about the world. We have self always present within our system, and the protectors, managers, exiles are all learned through experience or from lineage. Ooh. So here is a picture from the IFS website. So this was adapted by Marielle Pastor, who helped kind of create this overall picture. And this is how the IFS world kind of comes to light here, is we have self reaching out into every single part of these roles, these parts. And then I really like side by side's nutrition image here, where we have the self kind of grounded in the bottom with those 8 key C's. And then we have all of these parts kind of above us, between the XLs, firefighters, and managers. So what is the role of the dietitian? Our role is to really kind of stick more with working with our protectors. I see the therapeutic work is best saved for the psychotherapist who is trained with the IFS model. So keeping the XLs in a space where they are heard, seen, understood within your client relationship, but then referring out as those XLs really start to present themselves, because those are really, really tender. And the way I see it is I want those to be really witnessed by someone that can help them with that deeper work. So setting up the space, you want your client to be aware of their energy, putting away distractions. Of course, I say that as I receive an email, and working on encouraging the client to be present. So having the client really be in the therapeutic space, taking away distractions so they can turn inward. Um, this often is helpful to lead a little bit of a self-guided meditation or with your client to get them ready to explore those statements inward. And usually we can start kind of before we kind of start to dive inward, though, we generally have a session, right? And so during the session, you might hear some trailheads. These are just a couple examples that I thought of. One example is I must write out all of my meals and snacks. I need to stick to my plan. Another example might be, and after looking at my body this morning, the voice in my head told me not to finish my plate. I'm going to save my dessert for later because the calories are too much. I need to focus on my work. I don't have time to cook or sit down for a meal. The portions that the restaurant give are huge. I don't know how someone can finish the dish. I worked out to the point where my legs wanted to give out. I felt so sick. And one moment I was fine, and the next I'd eaten the entire gallon of ice cream. I'm sure working with eating disorders or just with clients in general, we might have heard these statements before. And so diving into these trailheads as a clinician, we're kind of listening in for um, what is the belief and what is the behavior. So for the first one, I must write out all my meals and snacks. I need to stick to my plan. This protector is striving for perfection by controlling the intake as well as trying to plan everything out. The obsession of intake and compulsiveness may be due to feelings of shame and guilt, right? It's all driven by an exile. After looking at my body this morning, the voice in my head told me not to finish my plate. That's stemming from a lot of criticism and judgment about foods and about bodies. And the control is overriding those intuitive needs around intake, around food. I'm going to save my dessert for later because the calories are too much. Again, this is a lot of judgment and criticism about the food as well as criticism about myself. I need to focus on my work. I don't have time to cook or sit down for a meal. This is definitely an avoidant behavior from food, striving for perfectionism, and in a way, it's compulsive that we were focusing on the food, not on the work, and denying ourselves our needs as people. The last three from the trailhead slide. The portions that the restaurant give are huge. I don't know how someone can finish. Again, I hear the belief between how much food one is supposed to have, as well as there's judgment and criticism kind of following suit very closely. I worked out to the point where my legs wanted to give out. I felt so sick. There's a distraction from the exile. There's a compulsive behavior of movement. In a way, it's almost self harm, getting to the point where you feel so physically sick, and likely there's some disassociation happening. Another example, the last example is that one moment I was fine, and the next I had eaten the entire gallon of ice cream. So here we have a distraction from the exile, there's a compulsive behavior, and likely some disassociation as well, because we don't just forget that we enjoyed an entire gallon of ice cream. Likely there was something else going on there too. So here we kind of get to name the protectors. So having client notice the stem of this behavior or belief, what is the message? Is it really the food, or is there something else informing this behavior? So as we know, especially with eating disorders, clients say it's about the food. It's not about the food. There's something else. Food is just something we can control. So as we start to dive in, the client is turned inwards at this point. They understand that, okay, this is maybe where we're going to start today with our trailhead, asking for permission. Hearts really like permission. They do better when they have permission to be seen and be understood. And then ask the client, is there any concern in getting to know this part? Um, Client might say, I'm a little anxious about hearing what it has to say. I'm unsure how this is going to go. Um, and if the client gives you permission to move forward, have the client just describe it. Where does it sit in the body? What is its shape? Does it have a color? What is this part saying? And whose voice is it? It might be a voice that the client recognizes from their own family. It can be a former coach, a teacher, anyone that they looked up to, or it can be themselves. Um, Use the client's language when describing it. For example, is this part yellow? Well, example, the part is yellow, it sits in my gut, and it's just giving this sense of duty and urgency. So clinical response can be, it sounds like this dutiful part was in from from somewhere. What's so urgent? Um, and as we begin to lean in more and more, is we're trying to unblend parts. So the client stated that there's a suppression of their feelings, or parts suppressing their feelings, and that makes them angry. So the question is, okay, is the part that's being suppressed angry? Is there another part that's suppressing this other part? And trying to kind of peel them off one by one. And the thing is, we can't focus with all the parts at one time. So the kind thing to do is, okay, well, which part would we like to lead? And having the client identify, oh, I really want to sit with this angry one, or I kind of want to understand why this other part is pushing anger down. As we know, self cannot be angry, so there's a different part likely activated at that moment. Ask the client how they feel towards this part. They may be appreciative and understanding, which is usually led more by self. Might have anger, defeat, game, shilt. Oh my goodness, guilt, shame. If the client is not used to a self energy term, and clarify as there may be other parts that are wanting to be witnessed. How does the part feel towards itself? Are they aware of self? How does this part feel about its role? And find out that part's fears. What is it afraid of happening if it didn't have its role right now? And if this part is an exile, what does it want the client to know? As we begin to dive down and navigate, it's also pretty imperative before we jump into this work is to set boundaries of what we feel is within our personal scope as well as professional scope. So, as since this is a form of self-led therapeutic work, there may be things that you feel like are not within your bandwidth or scope to navigate and discuss. And so, having a statement or something to really continue working within the therapeutic space and witness, without having the client feel like they're unable to continue with their deeper self-led work. So witnessing those parts and having a phrase. So my phrase is, I hear how tender this part is for you. Well, I'm honored to witness this part of you that you are sharing. I want the right set of ears to listen and with their informed expertise. And I encourage you to capture this part and place she, he, they, however they identify the part as, gently in a safe space for you to continue to unravel this with your clinician. You're doing wonderful work, and I want this to be addressed with the best equipped person on your team, as I can see how sensitive this is. Some examples that are generally more within this exhale range can be SI, varying types of abuse, drugs, sex, things like that. Um, and so as practitioners, we know where kind of the line is, and also if a client does mention something, asking is if it's okay to discuss that with their therapist when you consult one another. And then we can have polarizing parts too. I realize this, I probably should have moved around a few of these slides. Um, so there are two different parts doing and saying two different things. So example is, I can't quit school and I can't quit my eating disorder treatment. And this can be a really great opportunity as we're navigating more of that counseling practice, is letting both parts know they'll have equal time during your session to speak, and they'll be witnessed and be able to speak freely without the other part jumping in. So often inviting the other part that's not going to be speaking during that period of time to kind of sit in the waiting room. And this often can be used to help clarify moments for clients and help validate both parts and their concerns. Oh, we're already at resources. So I wrote down a couple of resources here. So my first resource is please, please, if you want to start navigating this work, is doing your own work. And then as you begin to really understand this practice, is working with an IFS clinician to coordinate with a patient. So if you're really feeling ready and you've just kind of started to pick up the pace of this is where I really want to go, this is what the work I want to do, pairing yourself with an IFS clinician. And then also receiving supervision, which I cannot stress enough, no matter where we are within our scope in the space, whether we're working in eating disorders or substance abuse or cardiology, getting a supervisor to really help us navigate difficult cases. Um, I know Diane Richards. Diana Richards is an IFS certified practitioner and is a dietitian. And then here are some books if you're interested in reading about the practice more. No Bad Parts is a great place to start. But of course, there are so many others. So Introduction to Family Systems, Internal Family Systems Therapy, the second edition, IFS and Eating Disorders, Healing the Parts Who Hide in Plain Sight, and You Are the One You've Been Waiting For, Bringing Courageous Love to Intimate Relationships. And then there are, of course, plenty of trainings out there. I just listed 2 here, but I'm happy to go ahead and create a resource list to attach. We have our IFS practitioner level trainings, and there are also noted courses on the website. And then I was fortunate enough to participate in the Molly Kellogg professionals training. I think that was a really useful and helpful webinar or training to attend, as it gave me a lot of insight around how to kind of navigate this as a professional after receiving it as a client for quite some time. Oh, all right.
Awesome. Okay, let me stop the recording real quick.